a better substitute than having the instrument kept close to your ear. What is the best way to keep your mobile phone some distance away from your ear? Maybe you can have some tips to people who are using mobile phones all the time today, not just for making telephone calls but also for sending text messages.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of solutions or mitigating situations. One is that we do use hands-free, but there are two kinds of hands-free that are being used right now. One is what you call, you have a, I think it's called a Bluetooth, where
A remote device.
A remote device where you keep your mobile phone away and that's on your ear. Now that is not something which I would really recommend, because that is again a receiver. So that is also acting as a microwave transmitter receiver, but the wire which you have, where you put it in your ears and your phone is away, is a fairly safe thing. So if you are using that, then to a large extent your microwave device is
Some distance away from
your body, and the risk of glioma and the other heating
and glioma, I'm just clarifying once again for the benefit of those who may have missed it earlier, is a form of brain cancer. It's a particularly virulent form of brain cancer.
It's a spot in the skull where there is a problem and causes cancer. So that can be avoided, so that keeping the phone near the ear is avoided, which is good. The second thing is, of course, texting helps, because if you, instead of talking, you are
sending a text message.
You are sending a text message.
So, okay, that's a good message coming through. Talk less, text more.
Yes, and I think if you see, mostly if you see the usage pattern of people, let's say in the US or in Europe, they are hardly talking on the mobile, they are mostly texting.
Okay.
So that's something.
That's a better thing.
That's
to do.
Something which.
Once upon a time in India, we used to say talk more, work more, talk less. Now you're saying talk less, text more. All right. Okay. Maybe that's a good slogan you can start. Yeah. Go on.
Yeah. That's one. The second thing is that we need to, as I said, we need to encourage research. We ourselves are doing some serious research on inventing devices which can be fixed on cell phones, which can be fixed on computers, but what we need is, because there are no standards for this. Okay. So right now there are no standards like SAR value. So the problem is that if we go to a government laboratory like Samir.
What is Samir?
Samir is for a lot of electronic research. I don't readily remember the full form.
It's an acronym. Okay.
Yeah, it's based in Chennai. I think they have something in Delhi. But they said we don't have a standard, and anything which doesn't have a standard we can't test.
Before I come to the standard, one small point. Landlines are safer than mobile phones.
Yes. So if you are near a landline,
use a landline.
You use a landline
rather than a mobile phone. Okay. I should have mentioned, asked you this question earlier. Ajay, let's coming back to this issue of standards. What's the way forward? Could we sort of? You are saying the government should mandate a far more stringent, that's comparable to European standards, a specific absorption rate.
Where standards are available, follow what is already
and should they publicize it? Should it be made available that you know you're buying this mobile handset, this has this kind of SAR? Should it not be made public?
It should be made public, and like you do for cigarettes. Like I believe that San Francisco, the state government has legislated that from March next year, it is going to be written on the cell phone that any cell phone sold in San Francisco is going to carry a statutory warning saying cell phones are injurious to health.
So just like when you buy a cigarette packet, you see a picture of a diseased lung, and you have a big bold letter which says cigarettes are injurious to your health, and it's mandatory for all publicity given to cigarette smoking. You might soon start having something like that for mobile phones.
Because many people don't know that, and at least they should know that yes, it is injurious. Somebody must tell them.
Any other advice you'd like to give, Ajay?
So that is one, that the government has to specify standards, publicize this a little more like they do for cigarettes or for anything else, and in this interest of public safety, and they must fund or they must encourage more research.
Now tell me, how does the government also resist the lobbying power of the telecom industry? You know, I mean, they are big business houses, they are, you know, prominent companies, they are big advertisers, the media depends on these cell phone companies, they spend God knows how many thousands of crores of rupees every year on advertising. How powerful is that lobby, and how staunchly do you think they will resist the proper implementation, the proper enforcement of these standards that you're talking about, which are comparable to the standards in Europe, in America?
I think they will, because the market in India and China is much bigger than it is in Europe and in America for these devices.
We are the second largest telecom market in the world. China is the biggest.
Yes. So here's where the market is, and here where they are growing. So obviously they will resist it big time.
What advice do you give the government, this interministerial committee? If you assume that the DOT will support the industry, then who goes after them? Is it the Ministry of Health? Is it the Ministry of Environment and Forests? The Indian Council of Medical Research?
Well, if the government is one body, so these are different arms of the government. So if one arm decides that all the arms have to work together, I don't think you can have a situation where the Ministry of Environment says one thing and Ministry of Health says another, and
we need another empowered group of ministers under Mr. Pranab Mukherjee, is it?
Maybe. So I think that if the government creates enough publicity about it, the only way out I see is that the customer has to demand. The customer has to get concerned enough.
Has to realize the potential hazards.
Yes.
And then put pressure.
And then put pressure.
So at the end of the day, if I get you right, the way forward is more research, more publicity, raise awareness, educate people, educate the young in particular.
And find solutions, because people are not going to stop using mobile phones. So we have to, while we educate them, while we say it's bad, but we have to also find solutions at the same time, how they can use it in a safe manner.
And these solutions are how to use mobile phones in a safe manner, including using it less.
Yes.
Okay, Ajay, we are out of time. I have to conclude this conversation with you at this juncture. Thank you very much for coming here to the studio of Lok Sabha Television. Well, there are a number of very, very important messages. If your mobile phone is not to become a cigarette, if that mobile phone is not to become injurious for your health, restrict the time you use on that phone. If you have hands-free, keep that instrument away from your body. If you have an alternative, text messages rather than talk. If you have a choice, use a landline, because excessive usage of mobile phones could indeed cause a whole range of health hazards which are just coming to light. New research being done in different parts of the world and in India. These are the messages that come through. Thank you very much for being with us on this program.